Hey, everybody! It's week 7. This is a live webcast, and look where we are. If you are looking at the main camera, and I think you are. Oh, Amber Rose is performing. We're all performing. Wait, this is the week of the tree dance. Some trees.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be me and you.
Where's Allie when we need her? Behind us are the absolute exquisite big south-facing wall windows. Oh boy, we are in the Arts Cafe at the Kelly Writers House, renovated. We're very excited about it. And I see we have Jake Marmer is there. Hey, Jake.
Hey, everyone.
Good evening to you. Yeah,
to you.
Just so people know, Jake is teaching ModPo to his high school students in Palo Alto, California. And Anna and I joined them. Was it yesterday? We joined them they were so. Sorry,
great.
cute. Is cute allowed? Can I say they were cute?
They were really sweet.
Wonderful, and they seemed to like us, and that was fun. Anyway, hi, Jake. I see Erica's there as well. Hi, Erica.
Hi, Al.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I just want to say that when we first started this, and Erica's been part of ModPo for quite a long time, and when we first started this, this was always the week that this is the sort of week that got Erica signed on to ModPo. This is a week, so I guess we're going to turn to you for some enthusiasm about certain aspects of the New York school. Dave Poplar in Arizona. Hello, Dave.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, good. And what's the temperature out there in Arizona?
It was about 81, 85, something like that today.
Okay, 81, 85. I'm glad you're philosophically precise about these things. And I saw Max joined us. Hey, Max.
Hi, Al.
Max in Chicago. I bet you can see your breath in Chicago tonight.
It's getting down there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Come on east anytime, although we're having the same problem.
It usually heads that way, yeah.
Say that again, Max?
Our cold usually heads in your direction.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's the problem.
Yeah, 24 hours later.
All right, so we have our friends in the Google Hangouts. We also have Amber Rose here, who brought me tea in my Wonder Woman cup. Zach? That's my Wonder Woman cup. Thank you, Amber Rose.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Good evening. Hi,
Amber
Al.
Rose, good evening. Amber Rose is watching Facebook, so if you're Facebook fans, get to Facebook and talk to Amber Rose. And we have Anna, who's chewing on her sweatshirt. Anna, have you lost it? This has been quite a week. What are you doing
I'm so
over there?
tired.
You're looking at your own notes.
No, I'm looking at Twitter. These are Ray Maxwell's notes. He
Oh,
tweeted
Ray.
a page.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah, Ray,
Okay.
look at these great notes on Twitter.
Anna is looking at the forums, but she happens to be looking at Twitter. And we have Jason. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Al.
Hey, you're
Hey.
you're not too often up here at the table, so I'm going to get a Jason hug.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, hey. Jay, I love Jason up here, and I've got a Jason surprise for everybody. And Davey is on the phones. Hello, Davey, way back there.
Hi, Al.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Zach,
Al?
pay attention. We're talking to Davey, so you could probably turn the camera on Davey. There we go. Okay, there's Davey. Wave, Davey, so they can see that you're back there. And we have Chris and Zach.
And Molly. Molly's here.
Molly just joined. Hey, Molly.
Hi, Al.
Hey, the gang's almost all here. Hey, it's good to see
God.
you. And we have, of course, Chris and Zach, and I just want to shout out to them because they have done the miracle of not only is this the very first ModPo live webcast, which is a complicated tech setup, in the renovated Arts Cafe, but the previous program, which is called Speakeasy, which is poetry, prose, and anything goes, open mic, they left at like 8. So these people set this thing up. Usually it's 2 hours in a familiar place. This time it was 59 minutes in an unfamiliar place. So if the thing just blows up, that's why. Anyway, hey, Chris. Hey, Zach. Do you have any kind of microphones over there? Not really. Okay. Well, speaking of microphones, we have Selena. Hi, Selena. You want to turn the mic on and test it out? Turn it on. Hey,
Working?
Selena. And Jamie is next to you.
Hi, I'm here for the second
We
time.
also have two other pals, Joan, who happens to be related to one of the teaching assistants.
Yes.
Jason's mom. There's some hearts going out there.
Something else. I also was Dave Poplar's English teacher when he was in high
No
school.
shit.
No shit.
Wait, look at Dave. Dave. Wow. Dave, say something, Dave, so that. Dave, say something.
Hi, Miss Jessica. How's it going?
Oh my God. This is freaky.
It's going well.
Oh my God. And also, Christine. Hi, Christine. So, all right, we're going to get started. Yeah, I just thought I'd wave to Christine. I got a smile. We're going to get started. I have a couple shout-outs, and then I'm going to recite the list of the poems, and then we're just going to go. The number is 610-616-3208. Davey will answer, 610-616-3208. We're going to give books away as gifts to the first two callers, and the first caller is going to get Jason's fabulous book of poems called Heat Wake, and there's a Heat Wake poem in ModPo Plus, by the way, in a previous week. And so here it is. Yeah, that's the first thing we're going to give away. So 610-616-3208. Couple shout-outs. First of all, Carol Groves. Carol Groves writes, I live in the UK in a small village, but when I read O'Hara's lunch poems, I am in New York. Exciting, rich, varied, etc., etc. Energy and focus. And then later, Carol notes that particular poem she's talking about gets a little sad and says life is suddenly transient for every one of these New Yorkers. And so she's, again, happy she's in a little village in the UK. But anyway, shout out to Carol. Hey, Carol, I really think it's cool that the New York poets do give you that sense of place. And I think Davey might actually, if there's a lull in the conversation, Davey might actually chime in because Davey's really interested in the whole question of what it might be like for Carol Groves in a small village in the UK to be understanding, to be in New York, basically, when reading O'Hara. And the second shout out is going to be through an audio. And Chris, I'm ready to play the audio. Are you ready? I'm ready. Okay, here it is. This is Diane calling in. She left us a voicemail. Here it is. And I am going to ask the people at the table, plus the people in the Hangouts, every one of you, to say something really, really, really brief in response to Diane. Okay? So listen to Diane and say something really brief, everyone. Here it goes.
Hi, Al. My name is Diane. I tried to call the 610 number but couldn't get through. I'm watching you all on your webcast and loving it as I always do. I just wanted to thank you and let you know that I'm a brand new newbie to poetry. I have almost no higher education at all. I'm in my 60s and I'm loving every minute of it. It was suggested to me that I try ModPo by my nephew, and I'm so glad he recommended it. I have always been a big dum-dum when it came to poetry and was afraid of it, and I'm finding that I'm learning a tremendous amount and loving the whole process. So I just want to thank you for that. And that's it. Thanks so much. Bye.
Okay, Amber Rose, you're first. Something to say to Diane.
Something to say. You sound young and curious, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
So keep being great.
That's good. Anna?
I feel like we hear that a lot from folks who come into ModPo having not feeling like poetry is something that is maybe not sort of in their educational backgrounds in any way. And I just get so excited when I hear people come into ModPo, come into the course and feel like there's some way in which we've been able to give them avenues into poems.
Very cool. Jason, say something to Diane.
Well,
Diane's message was all made out of words, which poems are as well. And so all it takes...
She's a poet.
She's a poet, exactly. We're all poets by the language that we use. And it just takes a sudden, unexpected angle to see language as an art-making material.
Cool, very cool. Erica, say something to Diane.
It's so New York school.
Yeah.
It's a conversation.
I love that. Molly, say something to Diane.
I love that Diane said something about enjoying the process, and really, like, the poetry is in the process. So you're doing a great job.
Fantastic. Max?
I'm glad to have you with us, Diane.
I love it. Dave?
I love it. I second Anna's comment, and I'm proud to be in the same class with her.
That's very cool. And Jake?
Me too. And for my students, my high school students who are taking the course, it is so exciting to know that there are adults of all ages and from all over the world. And I'm kind of vicariously feeling it too. The English provinces doesn't sound like the end of the world, like too far, too provincial at all. There are further, more remote places, but it's exciting. And thank you for spreading us out.
That's great. I sure hope Diane's watching the webcast. Davey, before we get to the phone call, a comment to Diane?
Just that as the New York School is as much about being a body and moving through space as it is about moving through cities. And so it makes sense to be able to connect lots of different kinds of landscapes through the somatic experiences in the New York School poems. And so that's super cool to think about that connection.
And I'm going to say, because no one picked up on two things that Diane said. One is that she's had essentially no higher education, and the other, she called herself a dum-dum. And I just want to, and so that's kind of a funny thing to respond to, but I just want to say, when I hear that, and I hear as Amber Rose did, that young excitement, I think this is why I became a teacher all these decades ago. I became a teacher because I want to teach Diane. Not that I don't want to teach the people who are duly constituted as my students, with some people in the room, but because there's, as Jason implied, there's no such thing as dum-dum in poetry, and quite the opposite. Okay, I'm going to make a list of the poems, and then we're going to take the phone call and get started. Okay, so we have an O'Hara poem, very famous, The Day Lady Died. It's an elegy, an experimental elegy, I guess. Kenneth Koch, Variations on a Theme by Williams. It's just a joke, but it's a nice joke, I suppose. John Ashbery, The Instruction Manual, very unusual anti-narrative poem by Ashbery. Another O'Hara, A Step Away from Them, which is a real lunch poem. Barbara Guest's 20, my favorite poem in the main syllabus this week, kind of a dreamscape poem. Ashbery's Some Trees, which is an anthemic poem in ModPo. And then his later poem, a Reagan-era poem called Hard Times, which is about trickle-down economics. Ted Berrigan's 3 Pages, which is sort of male New York school tromping around the city, actually, the Lower East Side. Bernadette Mayer, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Patrick Rosal, Uptown Ode. James Schuyler in ModPo Plus, Salute. Bernadette Mayer, 2 poems in ModPo Plus, Tragic Condition of the Statue of Liberty, really relevant during this election cycle, I would say, that one. 2 sonnets by Bernadette, one called You Jerk, You Didn't Call Me Up, and the other, Chocolate Poetry Sonnet, which is about bringing your kids to poetry readings. Barbara Guest's Roses, Eileen Miles, 3 poems, Writing, Mount St. Helens, and Snakes. All 3 are brilliant poems. And John Yau's 8:30, Fireplace Road. Davy, who's on the phone?
Lisa Geisler's on the phone, and Lisa visited me in my office hour this morning. So I get to start and end my day with Lisa. And Lisa has a really wonderful question about the sort of extreme non-narrative poems.
Great.
Thinking about 20 and Some Trees in particular, I'll let Lisa explain, but Lisa has a really wonderful question.
Fantastic. Hi, Lisa. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, Al. Hi, everybody.
Hey. Everybody say hi to Lisa, please. Hi, Lisa. Look at the Hangouts. People are waving. It's cute. This is
That's so great. Somehow I'm behind on the video, so.
Yeah, don't look at the video while we're talking. It'll really mess you up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, where are you? Do you mind saying?
I'm in California.
Oh, cool. So it's nice dinner time there. And is this your first?
Yeah.
Is this your first ModPo?
This is my second year, but the first time to call in, I've tried like 3 times, and this is my first time I got through, so I'm very excited.
It's like an old-style radio show, Lisa. You know, like long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I hope somehow this little chit-chat here is making you feel comfortable.
It is. You're very good at that. Thank you, Al.
Oh, I try to be. So Amber was going to throw me out of the room. Lisa, what's your question? So you want to talk about 20? Barbara Guest? Or you want to talk about the difficult poems?
Well, and I think Ashbery's Trees and Barbara Guest 20. And I found this year, my second year, I was reading the New York School in general, but especially those 2 poems, that I found myself just really adoring those and liking those poems, even though I really have no idea what they're really about, that I just wanted to be in the moment in those poems.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to watch the videos because I was enjoying just being in those poems and reading them again and again. And I was wondering, is that part of the strategy that the New York School uses, part of the non-traditional narrative? You know, is that something maybe they want their readers to do? I don't know. Do you understand what I'm asking?
They might be wanting the readers to do what? To struggle, be at sea, be confused, be disoriented?
I guess, or just be in the poem and enjoying it, even if they have no idea what it's about.
Okay, that's really cool. I'm looking at all 5 people in the Google Hangouts, and what I'd like you to do is indicate with a wave if you would like to start to comment on the question about, let's just say, the more difficult New York School poets, and whether Lisa's instinct, which is to just go with the flow, is the right way to approach it. So wave at me if you'd like to say something about this. Dave Poplar, and then Erica.
I think that's a really perceptive comment, but on 20 especially, the way I take it, it's really about recreating that state. The poem is about creating that feeling, that hypnagogic state when you're between falling asleep and being awake, and just trying to think about 20. There's actually a philosophical tradition of thinking about whether we can perceive abstract objects, and they're like numbers. Like, how can you perceive just the concept of a number? So it gets you all befuddled just trying to think about that, and that's the feeling I get from reading this poem. And I think it's miraculous the way this poem is able to make me feel that way.
Oh, that's great, Dave. Erica, do you want to take this?
To build on what Dave is saying, I also feel like with the more challenging poems and poets this week, the experience of experiencing the language and just sort of letting it build up over you or wash over you and allowing yourself to kind of walk through the language of the poem is essential to figuring out what's going on. So it's less about the concrete narration and more about what the words are causing to happen for you.
Yeah. I want to ask Amber Rose a version of this question, and then Lisa, I want to get back to you to see if you want to add a comment. So Amber Rose,
okay.
When we first met, I think you said, tell me if this is an unfair summary of what you said about poetry. You said, I need to learn more about the, 20th and 21st century poetry. And I could tell that when we first started to do this ModPo thing, you felt like you needed to prepare. You used to really prepare for Webcast. You'd come in and say, I'm not prepared, don't call on me. And of course now, you could be facing a poem that you don't understand. You could go into the studio and sit there with me and Anna and maybe others and just talk about a poem that you hadn't worked out. And I'd like you to try to summarize that feeling, the now feeling, the feeling you have now, which is, I can do this. It doesn't have to mean, I don't have to figure it all out. It's not a puzzle where if the piece is in the wrong place, the whole puzzle is screwed up. Help Lisa understand why it's really okay just to let this stuff wash over you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I used to be super nervous. I had like meetings with Anna and Davey, like trying to get ready for Webcast. It was pretty bad.
Davey feels emotional about that old Amber Rose.
Baby Amber Rose and ModPo.
He's really not as happy with the current Amber Rose, who's really full of herself. I'm messing around with your emotional moment. I'm really sorry.
No, Davey loves me. Okay.
No, Davey loves me.
Okay. So how I feel now? Yeah, I mean, I think that now two things maybe are different. One is that I have a different kind of appreciation for the opacity of a poem, which is to say that I no longer feel invested in learning some dominant interpretation of it, but rather trust that no poem has only one interpretation, and certainly not a single interpretation that is right. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I think I trust more myself and what I bring to a poem. And part of what makes poems so powerful is that they call in networks of language and networks of meaning that exceeds the poem's context itself. So when I look at a line, even if I don't know the exact context that the poet was thinking about when they were writing, I bring in a network of language. I bring in my own context, and so that means that I'm bringing in meaning, and the poem's meaning is in that encounter. And I actually want to point to a line in Some Trees by John Ashbery, because I was already sort of thinking about this. And the line says, "You and I are suddenly what the trees try to tell us we are, that their merely being there means something, that soon we may touch, love, explain." And I was thinking about that line, touch, love, explain. And if we think about encounters with poems as first touching them, first just showing up to that encounter, love as a kind of caring, careful listening, and then the explanation will come after that and will sort of be revealed in and of itself.
Yeah. That's snaps for Amber Rose. That's just such a nice thing. Lisa, did you get all that? What do you think at this point? Is it okay? I don't know what your background is, whether you were the kind of student when you were a student that you had to get everything right and you were miserable when you went home and didn't get everything right. But poetry's kind of the opposite of that. Is it okay?
Yeah. No, I totally get that, and I love that about ModPo. I guess I was just, and I guess I was asking about also, just about the strategy of non-traditional narrative, and and also one of the things I'm thinking about is how do as we go by each week, how does how do the different schools or the different groups of poets, how do we change how we read their poems?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about, reading these poems, and is part of it just really engaging with the poem, and just being with it. Yeah. If that's part of what the poets want us to do. And I just have to say, I really love that, what Dave said about 20, because I found myself just returning to that one again and again today, and just it's like it invites us to into that daydream space.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the best way to read that poem is to be falling asleep while you're reading it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Lisa, I'm going to reframe your question for I think Max and Jake, but we're going to. So I want you to listen, please, to the responses offline, and we'll get somebody else to call. But thank you for calling. And,
thank you.
And are you in Southern or Northern California?
I'm in, Northern, Central California.
Great. Well, the ModPo team's going to be in San Francisco very briefly in January, so maybe you'll take a trip to San Francisco and see us.
Yeah, I tried to get there last year, so hopefully I'll make it this year.
Okay. Great, Lisa, thank you so
Thanks.
much. Thanks for calling. I'm going to reframe Lisa's last question, but just throwing out the phone number, 610-616-3208. After we get a couple of responses, let's go around, starting with Anna in the forums. Amber Rose has, I think, Facebook, right? And you're looking at forums, and I can see Twitter. So, okay. So here, Jake and Max, I just want to reframe the question. What's okay, or even better, what's good about non-narrative? That is to say, we all know what's good about narrative. You find out what happened. You get to the end. There's a sense of completion. You can go to bed after you turn the last page of the book. All that stuff, right? Dorothy clicks her heels 3 times, gets to go back home, and knew she should have been there in the first place, right? But non-narrative, what's good, healthy, interesting, compelling, positive about non-narrative? Jake first, then Max. Jake, are you there? We're not getting you.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you might needed to unmute yourself, I think.
Okay. Now I am audible. So I mean, the first thing I'll mention is that it's because the poems are so free associative, you tend to free associate as well. Because some of the stuff in the poems is found and sort of arbitrarily assembled. There's that quote from Charles Olson that maybe some people here might help me remember, but he said something about like arbitrary is the real morality, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And Amiri Baraka said something to the same effect. So this kind of free associative writing obviously allows you to free associate and maybe read in a way that you don't normally read poems, like more experimentally. So there is that, and also just building on Lisa's point of being within those poems without necessarily hammering the meaning of every little bit of it down, like and to her point that New York school poems are different and require their own readings. I would say like they require being read out loud. And the pleasure of being in a poem that's read out loud, that's a New York style non-narrative poem, is the music of it all and the performance that you naturally fall into.
Thank you. Max, what's good about non-narrative?
I think aesthetically, I want to echo what Jake said. There's something about the free associative potential of non-narrative that helps you or helps the reader or the poet find meaning in things that narrative would otherwise overlook. I'm thinking of 20 because this came up in my office hours yesterday. I'm trying to think through what the number 20 means, and that's not an enterprise that you would undertake with somebody in narrative fiction, for example, right? Like unless the author's really trying to call your attention to it in perhaps like a sly, plot-driven way, but like it's just an opportunity to dilate on like, hey, the number 20, what does it mean?
Yeah.
And there's also, I think, there's like a socio-political implication as well, thinking about how so much information in society is organized narratively, and what challenging that, what effect that has, or what potential it unlocks to challenge that that structure.
Very good. Thank you all for that response. Before we turn to the phone, what we're going to get, so the phone is free, 610-616-3208. I forgot to ask Lisa to give us you got the address? Okay, so Lisa is getting a copy of Jason's book of poems, and Jason will inscribe it for Lisa.
Yes, gladly.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's go around and hear what's happening in Threads and Twitter and Facebook. Amber Rose first.
All right, so I don't have a question yet from Facebook, but I do have a little story that Kristen posted that was hoping that you would see. Can I share it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, this is about his AP literature class, and they were getting ready to do some ModPo style close reading videos. And so the story is about a student who asked if they could call you to talk about making the ModPo video.
Oh, yeah, and they did call us.
Yeah, and they did call. But what you
was
don't
so
know
weird.
is the backstory, which is that they called, and I guess they got the writer's house, and they were so nervous that they turned beet red and hung up on whoever answered. They were like, oh my gosh, is this real life? Is this the writer's house? And hung up. And then
They're from Georgia near the Florida border. They talked to
Yeah.
us this afternoon.
And then the student, and then the teacher like encouraged them to call back. So you actually got the second call after the nervous
And
hang
the
up.
whole class was on the phone.
And they thought you were a rock star, and they were all fawning
Well, they
over
obviously,
you.
I'm not a
And
rock
so-
star. I'm Wonder Woman.
So he wanted that story to be seen. And just a note from Lawrence, who... okay.
Lawrence Trino.
Yes, Lawrence, who said that life doesn't happen in an A to B narrative, so
He's
non-narrative
so
poetry
right.
is better for capturing how life actually happens.
Yes.
And
yes,
lastly,
yes.
Nicole Braun just chimed in to ask, would we say that non-narrative poetry has more potential for critical thinking?
Molly, in a second, I'm going to give you a chance to answer that once Anna throws a few things in. The question to repeat is?
Would you say that non-narrative has more potential for critical thinking?
All right, so Molly's going to take a shot at that. Thank you. Anna, what do you got?
There's all kinds of good questions here.
This is in the forums.
In the forums, yeah, I'm in the forums. Come say hi. Got a bunch of folks just chiming in and saying hello and, to everyone. But I'm just going to hold those for myself.
Okay, all right.
Mary Armour is really interested in gender pronouns and the lack thereof in Bernadette Mayer's poem Invasion Body Snatchers.
Wait, Davey, did you talk to Mary in South Africa?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Mary came to your office hour?
Yes.
Man, it's like a conspiracy. Okay,
Yeah.
Let's definitely get to that. David,
Great question.
will you holler at me if we forget that topic, because it's such an interesting topic. And actually, Jamie and Selena can speak to that, because
Sure.
we talked about that in
It's
our
so good.
seminar.
Another
Okay.
good one
Yep.
from Jonah, wondering about Patrick Rosal's poem Uptown Ode that ends in an ode to the machete. Jonah asks, can we unpack or translate what Patrick means when he writes, allow me to translate? What kind of translation is this poem enacting, and for whom is it being translated? Really great question.
That is a good question.
Another one from Terry Talty, wondering about the sort of specific cultural references in the New York School poem and how those kind of specific reference points do or don't date the poem in a really specific moment.
Good one.
Yeah, all good. So many good
Okay.
questions.
Jason, you got one from the forums you're interested in?
From Luke Skinner, he comments that in all current anthologies of homosexual verse or gay and lesbian poetry in our time, there aren't any Ashbery poems. And he wonders, he says Ashbery did say all the time that his poems didn't have a subject. Can that actually be true for any writer?
Yeah. Those are two complicated questions, Luke. I saw that earlier. The first part implies that Ashbery was not comfortable being grouped in, this was in the 80s and 90s, as among gay literature, gay poets. He was very uncomfortable with that designation. And so that sort of refusal kind of lasted for a long time. I'm not sure at the end of his life that he would have protested so much. And the second part of the question that Luke was asking was
can a poem not have a subject?
Yeah, right. Yeah, subject as in subject matter. Yes, and Ashbery definitely felt that way. He wasn't writing about a thing. He wasn't writing about anything. He was writing about subjectivity itself. Molly, we're going to turn to you in a second on that question, but I just want to look at some tweets here. So Sanjeev was I think Sanjeev is in India right now and is tuning in and says, wow, Amber Rose, wow, that was so eloquently put. And I think that was about your coming to relax about reading and interpretation. Let's see. A lot of people like Diane's call. And people have said, yeah, Ray Maxwell, the renovations are great. How can I get up there before the end of the course? And I just want to say to everybody that on November 19th, we are having our Final Words webcast. That's a Monday. We usually do it on a Wednesday. So it's week 11, essentially. Monday, the 19th at 10:30 a.m., and we want everybody to come. We're going to have a party. We're going to have pizza. Selena's here. She's coming. We're going to have pizza. We're going to have a party. November 19th on a Monday. All right. Molly, before we go to the phone, do you want to take a crack at that question?
Wait, before Molly does, I just want to say that Kristen's pronouns are she and her. I didn't look at yes, so apology, correction. Okay.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Molly, do you want to take a shot at that?
Something about non-narrative being more ripe for critical thinking. Is that ish? Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I would say inherently, right? Because narrative poetry already gives us the packaged story, right? Gives us the beginning, the middle, and the end. So there's not so much for us to try to interpret, right? Where non-narrative, we have to kind of put the pieces together for ourselves and insert ourselves more into the making of the story.
Yeah. Thank you. That was succinct and great. Next week, the Language Poets, I hope, going to talk a little bit about Lynn Haginian's My Life, and there is a non-narrative telling of a person's life. She decided to narrate her life, and she did it out of order, and she did it randomly, quote unquote, and it is a real test of, I think there is a strong ethics to that book, and yet the ethics depend on the non-narrativity. Davey, we have someone on the phone?
We do, yeah.
All right. And whoever it is, Selena is going to answer.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, Laura's calling from Australia and is a 4-year ModPo person and is excited to talk to everybody.
Hey, great. Laura?
Hello, Al.
Hi, Laura DiBernardi.
Yes, that's me. And I just wanted to say thank you to you and everybody. After 4 years, I'm still enjoying ModPo, still finding it exciting. It's my lunch hour here, so I just had to call.
Oh, is this the first time you've called in 4 years?
Yes.
Oh, it's great to hear your voice. You're such a good ModPo citizen, Laura. You do so much for us. Thank you. Is there ever going to be a chance when you can make the big trip and come visit us?
Look, I'd love to. I've got friends in Philadelphia, so I can easily stay there. But one thing I did want to say was that how ModPo has helped me evolve in my attitude towards poetry, not just understanding poetry, but to the poets themselves. You know, when I first read O'Hara, I went, ooh, I kind of jerked away. And then I've got these young friends in Melbourne, half my age, and they love him. And I was charmed by them as by their love for him. And it was that then that brought me to him, and now I enjoy him. So there's this movement, you can move away from a poem and then you can move towards it. And I think that that's wonderful, and that ModPo allows that. So I do want to thank you. It's not as if I have to kind of kneel before you, Al, and just agree with everything. And you allow me to have my own dynamic around a poem. And I think that is so vital a part of how we enter poetry, language, and the world itself. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely of you to say. First of all, I'm going to show you which book we're going to mail to you. It'll take a couple of months to get there, but
you don't need to mail me a book. That's too expensive.
No.
Send
We
it
are
off
going
to someone in America.
I
Send it
insist.
to someone in America.
No.
We can probably do better with it.
No, we're going to send you this book because there's going to come a time during the slow post season, right? It's going to be winter here and summer there, and it's going to arrive, and you're going to remember your ModPo friends. You're going to remember this night. This is Stefania Heim's book, A Table That Goes On for Miles. Stefania Heim.
Well,
So
I'm so
Davey will get your mailing address, and Lily,
Alrighty.
who's not here tonight, but she loves sending these books to Australia. Lily will package it up, and we'll put a note in it, and it'll come to you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you to hang up and listen to the response. I'm going to ask Erica Kaufman. I haven't asked her this in a couple of years, to respond to O'Hara and to the New York School. So you'll watch and listen. So thank you, Laura. See you in the
later.
forums.
Bye-bye. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Laura.
She's Laura B. Bernardis. She's one of the best CTAs. Erica, could you reminisce? Young poet just starting out, trying, and something about the New York School. Maybe it was admiring Eileen Myles first, and then going to the New York School through her, or maybe it was just directly through what?
Through them.
Through them.
Yeah.
Through them, right, exactly, I'm sorry. Through them, Eileen, but also them, the New York School. Or maybe it was O'Hara directly. Can you tell us the sort of miniature version of the Erica discovers poetry through the New York School story?
It was probably through Anselm Berrigan.
Ah, okay.
Who I was lucky enough to have as a professor when I was an undergraduate. And without knowing that they were New York School poets, we read Eileen Myles, Ted Berrigan, Alice Notley, Frank O'Hara, Ashbery, and I became really obsessed in particular with O'Hara and Eileen Myles.
Yeah.
And then later Barbara Guest. And I think that what drew me to O'Hara in particular was it just felt completely familiar. It felt like a poem that I could live inside.
Yeah.
Particularly because I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah.
So just the cadence of what he does in a poem like The Day Lady Died, it just, there was something in the rhythm of it, and whether or not I understood all of the different references, it was sonically familiar.
Yeah.
And then I didn't understand that was something that a poem could do, that you could actually write something that was as kind of casual and conversational as O'Hara is. And then with Myles, her the very skinny line breaks.
Yes.
In a lot of her earlier poems.
Right.
Those two things, I think, were what really kind of sucked me in.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Let's take the call, and Selena's going to respond to whatever the question is. Are you okay with that, Selena? Okay. Davey, who's on the phone? Davey, who do we have?
We have Jim calling from Red Bank.
Jim.
Hello.
Hi, Jim.
And Jim has a super awesome question.
Hey, Jim.
The pressure's on. Hi. How
Are you
guys
gonna
doing?
make the drive over this year for the final words?
I hope so. But right now I'm logged into my work computer and looking at you on my personal laptop. So that's the way it's been going.
Okay.
First thing about ModPo. ModPo is not just a course; it's a community. It goes on. This is my third year, and I get to do all sorts of things with people like the Texas meetup people. I had some sessions with them. I get to get beaten down by Dave Poplar about the New York Giants. Eagle fan.
Wait, what's the story with the Giants? Is Dave?
Last year,
Dave
last
is an
year I
Eagles
was
fan,
going-
and you're a Giants fan. Is that it?
Yeah, last year I was, I would go to his office hours and take abuse on the status of the Giants.
Hold on, Jim.
it's a community.
Dave,
It's
how
a
are
community.
how are the Giants doing this year?
Yeah, okay. You really want to rub it in?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Dave's smiling, Jim. I don't know if you
Yeah.
can see that.
I can hear it. I can hear his lips creaking as he's smiling.
Oh, that was me, Jim. Sorry.
Oh.
Okay. All right, here's
oh
my
no,
question.
I have a Phillies fan, an Eagles fan to my left, and a Phillies fan.
Yeah, buddy.
Sorry,
Well.
Jim. Let's get back to poetry.
Yes, please. It's a question about Ashbery's style. I read an interview that must have been back in the 90s. I was in San Francisco, and I think it was a San Francisco Review or something, where they said, "Well, you're influenced quite a lot by Stevens, aren't you?" And his response was, "Yeah, maybe, but I think I've been influenced by Williams more." And I kind of puzzled about that for a while. Well, I kind of puzzled about that for a while, and then I thought, his diction is much more plainer than Stevens. He does have a kind of very plain diction. He doesn't have the same kind of rhythm, but he's got a very plain style, and the way he reads is very plain.
Yeah.
So the question is, where does he fall on that?
Oh boy, Selena is thinking, I'm not really prepared to answer this. All right, we'll punt on Selena. I'll ask Anna. I'll riff for a second and then give it to Anna. Okay. It's Stevens. Stevens all the way. I don't think Ashbery really learned that much from Williams. I think what Ashbery liked about Williams was the edgy modernist Williams of the teens and 20s, of the 20s in particular. The experimental prose and poetry person of Spring and All. But really, Ashbery is so Stevensian. He really is, Jim. And
I believe it.
Yeah, what's that?
I believe it.
Yeah. I mean, the pronouns in Stevens are constantly shifting, but not to the point where you think there's a different subjectivity. Stevens was really not playing with that. But Stevens would refer to the speaker as one like oneself, and then would refer to he, also, this is really annoying, don't do this with your friends, but we're referring to yourself as he. And then would often throw a they in there, not as much as Ashbery. I think Ashbery learned his pronoun shifts from Stevens there. So anyway.
Can I throw in one more comment?
Yeah.
It's actually a quote from a Stevens poem, Angel Surrounded by Paisans. It has to do with the non-narrative aspect of it.
Yeah.
And in the line he says, I am the necessary angel of earth.
Yeah.
Since in my sight you see the earth again. So it's all about imagination, and non-narrative poetry can just make you look at some trees differently than you thought of looking at them before.
Yeah. No, that's really well put. Anna, do you want to say something about Ashbery and Stevens and Williams and so forth?
I would only say that I'm not as much of a Stevens scholar as you are, but I also happen to know that having read this book of prose by Ashbery, that he was really into Gertrude Stein as well. And I think we can often learn a lot about a poet's own work by looking at what they've said about the work that they like. And Ashbery wrote really, really eloquently about Gertrude Stein. And I remember when I read this passage that I'm about to quote from, it not only kind of helps me unlock a little bit more of Stein, but also helps me kind of unlock Ashbery. So I'll offer this and hope that it helps folks also with both of those two poets. So this is quoting from John Ashbery writing about Gertrude Stein's stanzas and meditation, and the essay is called The Impossible. And this is just a brief excerpt. Ashbery writes, if these works are highly complex and for some unreadable, it is not only because of the complicatedness of life, the subject, but also because they actually imitate its rhythm, its way of happening, in an attempt to draw our attention to another aspect of its true nature. Just as life is being constantly altered by each breath one draws, just as each second of life seems to alter the whole of what has gone before, so the endless process of elaboration which gives the work of these two writers a texture of bewildering luxuriance, that of a tropical rainforest of ideas, seems to obey some rhythmic impulse at the heart of all that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Anna.
Jim, thanks so much for calling, and we want you to come here on November 19th to party with us.
I will try and get there.
Okay, great. Thanks for being
Take
part
care,
of ModPo.
guys.
Thank you. 610-616-3208. Let's collect, here at the table, let's collect some comments from the forums and Twitter.
I have another Ashbery question while we're on the subject.
All
yeah.
right. Mm-hmm.
This is from Susan Bertolino.
Uh-huh.
Susan writes, what in Ashbery's poetry suggests his affiliation with abstract expressionism? Is it because his poetry seems to be about nothing? Is it the beauty of the language juxtaposed with the alleged absence of subject, which I personally do not believe, nor do I believe it to be possible as hard as one tries? Ashbery seems very conscious and careful with his language. Does that negate the influence of visual arts, abstract expressionism, or confirm it? Ooh, big question.
It is a big question, and I don't know if we can really handle it, but I will simply read a couple of lines from Ashbery's The Grapevine, which suggests to me an abstract expressionist painting. All right, here it is. Of who we and all they are, you all now know. But you know, after they began to find us out, we grew before they died, thinking us the causes of their acts. Now we'll not know the truth of some still at the piano, though they often date from us, causing these changes we think they are. We don't care, though, so tall up there in young air, but things get darker as we move to ask them, whom must we get to know to die so you live and we know? It's just like crazy kinetic. Yeah. Okay, comment, are you seeing something in
Yeah, well,
in the thread?
I was just to respond to that to Barb from the middle of Barbara Guest's Roses.
Yeah.
And there's another thing I want to say. That she says she acknowledges writing from art and being interested in art. But I think, what she does with space here is fascinating. Still, there are certain illnesses that require air, lots of it. And there are nervous people who cannot manufacture enough air and must seek for it when they don't have plants in pictures. There's the mysterious traveling that one does outside the cube, and this takes place in air.
Amazing poem.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And I also think this stanza makes me think of both something we haven't really talked about that much is Ashbery's and O'Hara's navigation of and kind of creation of queer possibilities of language, and for almost creating spaces in their poems that readers could inhabit that were almost trial queer spaces, that were spaces that one can see subjectivity in unusual, unconventional ways.
Thank you for saying that. From years past that I think that Some Trees is about such a space.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool. Let's collect another. Amber Rose, you got a thing in Facebook you want to quote before we go to this person on the phone, and then Selena will really answer the question.
No.
Okay.
Do you want to do the Rosal question from Jonah?
I think it's too hard.
Too hard.
And we'll see him on Monday, and we can do that because we know him.
We could circle back to the Bernadette Mayer question if we wanted to.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, this was about the pronouns. Okay, let's see what the person on the phone says. Then we'll go back to Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah. Okay.
Erica, Max, and Dave. In a minute, we're gonna try to understand pronouns in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and we'll see if you have something to say about that. Okay, who's on the phone, Davey?
Tremendously. I'm gonna bring you up in the room and say hi to Al. Mandana's on the phone.
Mandana.
You got through. We were talking in the Facebook group
Are
about.
you was that supposed to be dramatic?
Hard to get
Okay.
here.
And now you should be able to hear Mandana.
Mandana.
Al.
Hi. Are you on a train?
Hi.
Are you on a train?
No, I am not on a train. I was on a train. but I think calling from the New York City subway would perhaps be
It's a little on the nose.
not a great idea. for the
That
webcast.
would have been first. That would have been the first. Oh, okay. Can you go run out to a
I
train?
really debated. I debated on doing that, and then I thought, not a great idea.
Oh, this is so funny. Twitter is going to blow up on this little exchange that we're having. Okay. Anyway, hi Mandana. You.
Hi.
Can I'm gonna preempt your question and ask you a question.
Go ahead. It's your show.
Nobody's ever said that to me. It is-
Mandana predicted that you would do that, Al.
What the fuck? This is a total setup. I'm mad at all you people. This is a conspiracy.
As lovely as Aphrodite, as wise as Athena.
Is that what it says?
Yes, it does.
I've been focusing on Wonder Woman, and I didn't realize there was wisdom as well. Hey, listen, Mandana, here's my question. Okay?
Okay.
In the last 4, 5, 6 years, you've fallen completely for John Ashbery's poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a chance. You got a chance to meet him before he died, and
A few times.
yeah. So just say from your heart, what is it about Ashbery that just completely captivated your imagination and still does?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, let me say I had a question in my mind, but when Anna read that excerpt about what he said about Gertrude Stein, I teared up. That might just be the age I'm at. I tear up very easily, but I really teared up. It was very beautiful.
It's the part about the only thing worth doing is what's not possible, right? Why do something that's possible, right? Selena, I'm looking at you. Jamie, why go to grad school, get a PhD? Why do anything that's possible? Do something that's no one's ever done. That's the only thing that's interesting. Yeah.
To be honest with you, our lives are really miraculous just as they are. I mean, quite literally, the fact that we can have these conversations, what's going on, even with the good, even with the bad, there's this miraculous impossibility that these cells formed the way they formed, that we are the people we are right now. We're having the conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
That's all impossible.
Yeah.
And yet it is. Now, with respect to Ashbery, I have you to thank for a lot of that. I'll have to be honest. Like a lot of people, I really had a hard time with him in the beginning. And I'm trying to think back why it was so hard, but I think part of it was that I was trying to find meaning. And, trying to find meaning in your own life is a very challenging thing. If you think about that, you can waste your entire life looking for the meaning in it. But really, the life is the journey, that circuitous path that he talks about in Just Walking Around.
Yeah.
That's the life that we're leading. And that's what his poetry is. The poetry is to be experienced as it is, not necessarily searching for something so deep. And life isn't linear. Life isn't narrative. So I don't love every bit of his work. I don't understand every bit of his work, but the challenge of appreciating him is the very same challenge I have in appreciating life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a good answer.
It's a great answer.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah, Jason. Mandana, here's Jason.
Mandana, what you were
Jason.
What you were saying initially, that to say the impossible, to act the impossible, is also one might not associate Ashbery as a political poet, but to think of for a place to dwell in language where an impossible thought might emerge is a political act, one that's important for us now.
And Jason, you always do this.
Well, what I want to say is that the queer poets of the early New York school opened up a huge space for lots of people to find their voices.
I think I haven't really explored the queer reading of Just Walking Around that I've been thinking about in the last year or two, but what you just said made me think of it. Mandana, that the longest way is the most efficient way.
Oh,
right?
It's
that it's not simply that he's a fuzzy-headed poet that he's walking around and people think he's weird, right? An object of curiosity, too preoccupied with the secret smudge in the back of your soul, just wandering around. That assertion, the segments of the trip swing open like an arch, that assertion that the longest way is the most efficient way is a deeply political assertion, given that we're all about efficiency.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's violence done against those who fuzzy-headedly just walk around.
Exactly, and who can't imagine an impossible a radical change is always impossible until it becomes possible.
This is why we need poets. Mandana, back to you. What do you think?
Jason, Jason, that's really beautiful. And you know what you were just saying made me look up. Thank God I'm back in my apartment. Made me look up one of my favorite Ashbery poems, which is "How to Continue."
Yeah.
And you know, when you read the last stanza of that, you can read it a whole lot of ways. You could from a lot of different standpoints. But you really made me think of it the way you were talking about reading Ashbery, because if you don't mind me saying it, and when it became time to go, none of them would leave without the other. For they said, we are all one here, and if one of us goes, the other will not go. And the wind whispered it to the stars. The people all got up to go and look back on love. And that is one of the most beautiful endings, and it still has resonance now, I think, especially with the political time that we're living in right now.
Mm-hmm. Mandana.
Yes.
Move to Philly.
Please.
I would love to move.
Manhattan's too expensive. Move to Philly. It's cheaper here.
You know, now that you've redone Kelly Writer's House, there must be a small garret for me to live in.
I'll tell you what, if you move to Philly, you can live in my office and I'll find another place to work.
Yeah, you get to work a little bit too early for me, but that's okay. Anyway,
Mandana, we love you. We are so
love you too.
Honored that you are part of our community. Thank you.
I am so blessed that you are all a part of my life. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night. We're going to take one more call, and the number is 610-616-3208. I'm going to ask Erica, Max, and Dave each in turn to say something brief that they're thinking about this week as we reread the New York School. Something, anything at all. And then I'm going to ask Selena to do the same, because I promised to, we've got the portable mic and we might as well use it, right, Selena? So the four of you, we're going to start with Max. What's on your mind as we've been talking the last hour or so?
Well, I've been thinking about Ashbery because Ashbery also came up in my office hours yesterday. And we got into a discussion a bit about these really wonderful, just revelatory moments that sometimes button these Ashbery poems, just like what Mandana just quoted. Well, I don't know if it's not revelation or epiphany quite, but there's this really, he's got this really great knack for just sewing up or buttoning up a poem sometimes. It's really quite lovely. I don't want to say that it's revelatory or it's an epiphany, because I think that would go against what Ashbery and the New York School are about, obviously. But he knew how to end a poem, and when he did, he did it right.
Yeah. I mean, the last line of Some Trees, these accents seem their own defense.
Yeah.
That's a great last
perfect
line. It's such a great line. Thank you so much. Erica, any thought? What are you thinking about right now?
I'm still processing what Jason was saying about queerness, because I agree. I think that what happens in the New York School is you get poems that extend a space for bodies to exist where perhaps they couldn't exist before. And I'm also thinking specifically about Barbara Guest and how different she is from the other poets this week, but how important I think she is to the New York School as far as representing kind of almost the limits as far as our experimentation goes in that first generation of New York School poets. Like if you look at a guest poem alongside an O'Hara poem, they're
different.
So different.
Yeah.
But I think that they're gesturing towards something similar.
Yes. Thank you for that. Dave Poplar, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking about how interesting it is that such intensely personal and specific experiences are somehow universalizable.
Yeah, that's right. And isn't that what we always said to ourselves that poetry should accomplish? That kind of thing?
Yeah, it brings us to a feeling of shared humanity. At the end of the day, we're all really experiencing the same things.
And getting back to Ashbery, I think he had a particular talent for that. You know, saying something that's so particular, but you think, oh, he's not really talking about only himself. I know what he's talking about. Selena, what are you thinking?
I actually want to go back to something that Mandana said because I thought that was really interesting, and it ties into what Amber Rose was saying earlier and when we were talking about non-narrative poetry and preparing. What Mandana said was that looking for the meaning can be a distraction. You can waste your life looking for the meaning, and I feel like that definite article is so important because it's not looking for meaning that necessarily is the problem or what's complicating poetry for us sometimes unnecessarily, because there's so many meanings and there's so many options. Exploring that meaning and enjoying the uncertainty and the multiplicity there is what's fantastic, and not looking for the definite meaning.
Wow, Selena, it was worth waiting for. Wow, I remember in school, with due respect to the teacher in the room, I remember in school, the teachers, by the time you got to middle school and high school, telling you to narrow down your options. So you're frowning because you probably never said that, but this was for a certain time. Maybe the teachers are cooler now, but narrow down your options. In other words, you're all over the place, Al, right? You're not really focusing. Narrow down your options. And then I got to college and I decided to study poetry, and I realized that was my way of fighting back against that idea of narrow down your options. Davey, who asked, that was a setup about the pronouns in Bernadette Mayer. Who was it that asked about that?
That was Mary's question, Mary
Armour.
question.
Yeah. Yep. So let's talk about that for a second, right? Okay. Can you
read Mary's question specifically?
I think Davey's got it.
Davy's got it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where do we start on that? And a bunch of us in this room had this conversation on Monday, but can you say, maybe for people who are around the globe right now getting out the poem, what should they look for that's interesting?
So the conversation we had in Al's grad seminar on Monday was that the reading of Invasion of the Body Snatchers that we're most familiar with, this is a sort of classic second wave feminist reading. This is a poem that brings the peripateticness of the New York School into the home and moving through the home and information that typically folks in the mother role have to keep track of. This is a poem that's thinking about how you can engage in the kind of movement between ideas and spaces while being responsible for domestic labor and thinking about the labor conditions of the New York School in contrast. And we thought about that reading, and then...
And it's not a bad reading at all.
It's a useful reading, and in dialogue with it, the fact that there are no gendered pronouns in Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Again.
There are no gendered pronouns.
There are no gendered
pronouns
in the poem.
The one gendered term that appears, other than folks' names, which are not necessarily gendered, is the term boy, which folks really want to read as a cisgender male term, which I have some questions about.
Well, brought up by wolves. It's hard to know what cisgender would mean in that context.
It's hard to know what wolves think about gender.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I
have a feeling we might guess what wolves think about gender.
I mean, I was brought up by wolves, and you can see my gender, so.
How does one respond to that? Your dad would not be very happy.
I'm sure he's watching
referring
this.
To. Yeah. Is he? Do you think he's watching tonight?
He's frequently watching. He's watched most of them. Yeah. In any case, so trying to think about what do we do with
Charles, are you there watching? Please call us. Please call us,
Oh my goodness.
610-616-3208.
And so asking the question of what kind of work are we doing as readers that we're grafting onto the poem? What kind of reading in are we doing to produce this feminist narrative? Or what kind of historicist reading are we doing to say like, well, like this is a poem about Bernadette Mayer's life. And how might we do these two things at the same time? Not to say we have to displace this feminist reading, but to say, how do we do this feminist reading while also thinking about the potential for this poem to think about, in our case, gender inclusivity in the classroom? What does it look like to very carefully read a poem without trying to apply a binary understanding of gender, while also understanding it as an important feminist poem and not understanding those things as separate or divergent, but as two parts of what the poem's doing?
Well said, and thank you for summarizing that. Let's look at a couple of tweets and comments, and then we'll go around for final words from everybody. So we won't take another call. So, Amber Rose, are you seeing anything that you want to quote? And then Anna?
No, nothing that I want to quote, but just a lot of community love is happening in the Facebook feed right now, which is really nice. Lots of folks were excited about Laura calling from Australia. And Sanjeev is being wonderful as always and posting lots of helpful links.
And he answered Dylan Kinnett's question, which we're not going to have time to get to, and that was so nice of Sanjeev to answer that.
Yes, Nicole is keeping us all laughing, so just lots of community love happening in the Facebook right now.
The Twitter thing is jolly, that's for sure. Anna, what do we have in the threads? Probably a little more serious there.
The thing that I'm most excited about in the thread is there's a really wonderful back and forth conversation happening between Mary Armour and Jonah about this very question that Davey just pointed us to, which is just really great. They're working through this question together, and it's like exactly what you want the forums to do. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I just got a little bit of shivers. What do we say? Shivers?
Yeah, I don't think chivers is the thing.
Shivers, chills.
Shivers and chills. There you go.
Yeah,
you made a word.
Because Mary's been associated with ModPo since I think the beginning.
Very beginning. Yeah.
I believe mostly she's in Cape Town, but she spends a lot of time in Zimbabwe, I think. I don't really know Mary that well. I mean, I know her in ModPo. Anyway, the idea that
it's 4 a.m. there. She's just awake.
Oh, Mary, wake up! 4 a.m. I get up at 4, but I've slept.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So it's just great.
It's just great that Jonah and Mary, two people from very different parts of my life are interacting like that. It's very cool. Aristel on Twitter, Mandana predicted that you would do that, Al, and that's in quotes. Okay, thanks, guys. Colleen Knight, Mandana, run to the train, run. Right, and Colleen Knight, also, whom we saw in Canada, also says that Just Walking Around is her favorite poem. Not just her favorite Ashbery poem, it's her favorite poem. Do you see something in there, Jason?
Well, what I foresee is my super late night office hour, which is going to be...
This is your final... Are you doing your final word now? Wow, cool.
I didn't know I was doing my final word, but I'll take it.
Sometimes you do your office hour announcement as your final word. You're just throwing that in there.
I'm throwing it in there because several people have expressed interest in discussing Patrick Rosal's Uptown Ode that ends on an ode to the machete.
And you'll do it in your office.
And it's a poem that it totally fascinates me, and if you want to talk about it, come by.
Fantastic. Okay. So we're going to do final words. And also, Jamie, will you take the mic to do a final word? Okay. So final words. So we're going to start with Amber Rose, and then we'll go to Erica. Hi, Amber Rose.
Hi, Al.
Are you having a good time?
I'm having a great time, aside from the fact that I'm like 5 degrees colder than I want to be in here right now. I've been
there's this
rubbing
thing
my
called
arms
heat
and
that's not happening in the new Arts Cafe yet.
Slowly but steadily, it's coming along.
Okay.
My final word is I really loved How to Continue by John Ashbery and was really happy that Mandana brought us to that poem. And I want to give a pitch for another book called M Archive by a poet named Alexis Pauline Gumbs, who was here at Penn this week. Yesterday. And I think her poems, the poems in that book in particular, give me a lot of tools for how to continue. And I think folks would have a really great time thinking about that John Ashbery poem and Alexis Pauline Gumbs together. It's an odd pairing, but I think it could be really fruitful. So that's my final word.
Thank you, Amber Rose. That's fantastic. Erica, do you have a final thought?
Yeah, I would encourage folks to look at the Eileen Myles poems, particularly a poem called Writing, which I feel sums up or says a lot about, I think, a New York school ethos. And my office hours are tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time.
We're going to just hear Eileen.
Writing. I can connect any two things. That's God. Teeny piece of Band-Aid, little folded piece of Band-Aid. I ran to the bathroom to see my face. Sometimes I don't want to see my face in the mirror. Sometimes I can't bear my thoughts. Sometimes I can't do anything. But that's okay. Band-Aid, book, God. That's right.
So good.
Eileen at their most intense and relaxed at the same time. That's okay. That's all right. I'm a poet. I can put anything together. Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for that. Jason, final thought, and then Dave Poplar.
I had a question for Dave Poplar, which is, what is it like reading Frank O'Hara in Tucson?
This is the beginning of a poem, I think.
But yeah, I would echo the kind of the amazement of once you get to start reading Eileen Myles, the poems multiply. I mean, they become much, much more than what they seem to be at first.
Yeah.
And so I highly second Erica's recommendation.
Fantastic. And Eileen has a new book of poems. Does anybody know what the name of it is, Davey? Evolution. Yes. I flipped through it the other day. Lily had a copy, and it looks really terrific. Dave Poplar, final thought?
It is interesting reading O'Hara in Tucson. I never thought about it before, but yeah, it really does transport me even farther than before because it's so much different here. So that's great. Thanks, Jason, for making me think of that. Also, I just wanted to say I'm really psyched for next week and looking forward to all the Ron Silliman stuff.
Fantastic. Yes, we get to the next week. It's the Language Poets. Anna, final thought?
I would like to continue the kudos and excitement about Eileen Myles and to encourage you to spend some time with their poems, especially if you're planning on writing the essay this week, which is on an Eileen Myles poem. And I think there's a lot of possible avenues into that essay. You can think about that, into that poem. You can think about that poem in conversation or in dialogue. Yeah. You can think about it in dialogue with other New York school poems. You can think about it in dialogue with, just the scene of New York. You can think about it as a love poem. There's a lot of different ways to approach this really, really, really great poem. And my office hours are at 12 o'clock Philly time tomorrow if you want to talk about it.
Midnight?
No.
I'm teasing.
Certainly not. I will be in bed.
At 10:30, you're going to turn into a pumpkin.
I have 9 more minutes before my bedtime.
Oh, my gosh. You know what you're doing. You're going home to watch the World Series. You're bullshitting us about wanting to go to sleep. So
don't test me on this.
Admit it. World Series. Jamie, final thought. Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
Hey.
So my final thought is related to what Erica was saying 2 comments before, where she said that Barbara Guest and O'Hara are actually different on a spectrum of New York school poets, and I wondered if we can see them as similar because of how they treat the idea of movement. So I thought how Guest the poem 20 makes us really go through the routine of thinking about the possibilities of 20. And then for O'Hara, what really drew me to his poems was his emphasis on the movement of the body. I always thought it was very exciting. So one of my favorite poems by him is Ave Maria, where he has this one line that says, "Mothers, bring all your children to watch the movies." I thought that, I hope people are also excited by O'Hara because he's always excited about movement. Yeah, so that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Davey, final word.
So something really awesome that's been happening in ModPo and in my life today is that folks are starting to write the essay on the honey bear, and someone in Al's grad seminar wrote a really amazing essay, and I wrote him a note, and it's been a real super pleasure to talk to Jonah about his essay and to have a conversation with him. And there are a lot of conversations that I've had in my 3 years of ModPo that have been important to me, but there aren't that many that have felt co-constitutive, like we've gotten to make a thing together, and that's been just like a super delight. And if you're curious about different ways to approach the essay, look at Jonah Griebel's essay. It's really awesome. If you're like, how do I deal with this poem? Jonah asked a lot of really careful and systematic and attentive questions, and he wrote a really amazing essay in a way where he was certain without being too certain, which is hard and is true of all the academic writing I love, and so I wanted to just shout out that conversation and Jonah's essay.
Did you say
Jonah's our MVP today.
Jonah is really. I hope Jonah's watching this is starting to feel good about existence. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, you used the term co-constitutive. Yeah. So for my final thought, and then I have a shout out. Co-constitutive. That's actually sort of the word I want to use to describe everything I've longed to make possible is as a teacher in 3+ decades. I think ModPo sort of has, first Kelly Writer's House as a physical space where it's non-curricular showed me the possibilities there for complex, overlapping, various everything, including multi-generational collaborations that happen in the space. But then ModPo, and what I really want to plug in this regard is the CCCR syllabus, the Community Collaborative Close Readings. There are probably 80 videos there now. The first one was made in November of 2012, and they've just been added. Amber Rose and I earlier this evening were talking about one that was made by Imad Majid and 2 of his poet colleagues in Colombo, Sri Lanka, which was a kind of reading not so much against, but along with and widening to the point where there was a relevancy to these Sri Lankan poets of the 9/11 poem that Charles Bernstein wrote, which we're going to talk about next week. That opened my eyes to that poem, seeing those 3 poets, led by Imad, who was a fan of Bernstein but really wanted to do more with the poem than I, as a New Yorker, could do reading the poem by a New Yorker who's, Charles is older than I am, but I think we're probably in the same general category. And this is what's happening. And also in our grad seminar, there have been a couple of them, including one that Selena participated in, and what I want to say about co-constitutive is that, and Anna and I deal with this all the time when we bring in, and everybody in this room really, and Jason's sort of the master of the whole thing. Nobody is quite more skilled than Jason at walking into a room and then figuring out what he means and what everybody else's means as he speaks. I don't know how the hell you do that, but you do it every time. And what I marvel at is when, for instance, those 4 people, there's 4 of you, right, Selena? They actually figured out what they meant and wanted to say as they were saying it, and isn't that exactly what the poems we're studying do? That's what this non-narrative thing is. So it's just great. CCCR, make a video, let us know where it is on YouTube, and we'll put it in there. Okay, and finally, before I say goodnight to everybody, a shout out to Lawrence Trino. Here's Lawrence Trino's experience with ModPo. 2014, watch a few videos. 2015, that's always the first one, right? 2015, most videos and live webcasts. 2016, complete course. So it took the guy 3 years to actually do what most people think you should do the first year, right? 2017, Catch Whatever I Could and some ModPo Plus. 2018, live webcasts and forum. Not even the poems. That's cool. My point is, he says, that there are so many angles to work from. Just enjoy and join the conversation. Carol Groves, the aforementioned who started tonight with her comment about being in a small village in the UK. Wow, what a great way to make ModPo last a long time. I'm in my second year, blah, blah, blah. The mentors are working their socks off to encourage us. Thank you, CTAs. And then I wrote, I agree, Carol, I love the multi-year strategy. Life is long. Poetry requires length. It is so wrong, it is so absolutely wrong that the university developed over the last 400 or 500 years to produce a 3-month unit that we call the course. That's so wrong, so stupid. You can't walk out of a classroom in December and say, got that. Of course, you know you don't got that, but the group, the co-constituency that you developed in that 3 months is gone. You'll never reproduce it. And what happens here is that Lawrence Trino is typical, is just this is not a course. It's, as Jim said when he called from the Jersey Shore, it's a community. And it's not a community like bullshit community. It's not like the president saying we all have to come together as a community when some people want to blow other people up, because you don't believe that for a second. But when Lawrence Trino says, I want to take 5-6 years to figure out what this is all about, I believe him. I believe him. And poetry is the kind of thing that you want to spend a lot of time doing. Amber Rose, thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Anna.
Thank you.
Go to sleep.
I will.
Jason, you're the best. And you are, can I just show what you're trying to deal with?
I don't even know if there's still
It's broken. I mean, usually it's people's phones that break. I can just see Jason walking around.
I've had this maybe since early
2002, it looks like. It's like 40 pounds. Anyway, Zach, Chris, can we do something for him on this computer? Anyway, Jason, thank you.
Thank you.
Erica, you're the best. Thank you. It's good to see you. Bye. Dave Poplar, thank you. Davey, how was the phone stuff? Pretty good. You're just a little far away from us, right? Yeah. Joan, thank you for being this guy's mom and that guy's teacher and all the other things that you do independent of those people. Thank you very much. Christine, good to see you. Jamie. Selena, Chris, I got to take a swig here. Zach and Chris, get to the mics. Chris, get to the mic. Say something.
Hey, Al, is this thing working?
Hey, yeah. What did it take to do this in the new room? What do you think of the new room?
It's pretty amazing. And this is our first webcast here, but I'm just looking forward to what more we can do here now that we have it and we have some time to get in and really play around. So
it's going to be really cool. When we're done, we're not done yet. When we have all the AV in here, we're really going to be able to do cool things. You think the webcast is cool now? Wait till you see what we're going to do. All right, thank you, everybody. Good night, and we'll see you in the forums, and we will see you next week on Wednesday for another webcast.
At 3 p.m.
At 3 p.m. Philly time.